Welcome to the Real Estate Talk podcast with myself, Oliver Ingalls, and my esteemed co-host, Benji Weinberger. If you learn anything from today's podcast, please do like, subscribe, and share.
Nobody ever kicked a Ritz-Carlton guest out the door until Muggins. I actually did it one time. And he called me everything under the sun, really tried to pressurize me.
Yeah. Can you get us a discount at the Ritz-Carlton, mate?
James, we need you in 2 weeks' time. And we're going, holy crap. So, hold on, Mr. Dickhead, excuse me.
Yeah.
You're gone. By the way, we're moving to the Cayman Islands. What? Where? Canary Islands? So I'll be absolutely honest with you. This is probably the slowest year I've ever had.
Yeah.
He didn't care about me, my family. It's all about fees.
Of course it is.
James O'Brien, who is one of the leading agents in the Cayman Islands. Find out the most expensive property that he has sold on the island. He was awarded Marketing Video of the Year in 2022. And see what little gift he had for us at the beginning of our podcast.
James was the former executive director of the residences at the Ritz-Carlton in the Cayman Islands. He tells us a bit about how COVID was the catalyst for his business and the pitfalls of having to wait a year and a half to do his first deal. This is going to be good. Let's do it. James, thank you ever so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks, Oliver. It's my absolute pleasure. I'm delighted to be here in London in the sunshine. I think I brought the sun with me.
You did. You can come back and stay.
So yeah, really looking forward to this. If I'll be honest, a little nervous, but let's see how it goes. This is my first podcast being a guest, but delighted to be here.
You'll be fine.
I thought before we got into it,
I
brought a little gift from the Cayman Islands for you guys.
Oh, wow.
They are the famous Tortuga rum cakes. Big shout out to Tortuga.
That.
Great with a cup of tea.
Sponsored ad?
Sponsored ad? Not really. Tortuga, you owe me a couple of dollars.
Yeah. I saw you hiding a few things down there earlier. I was like, what's he hiding down there? That is amazing.
Caribbean rum cake.
So this is like the local delicacy.
This is the local delicacy. This is the original rum cake and one of Cayman's biggest exports.
I love that.
Besides its people, this is one of Cayman's biggest exports.
I love that.
Look forward
Rum
to
cake.
eating that later.
Yeah,
I had
really kind of you.
Very good with a cup of tea.
Good. I had a wisdom tooth out yesterday, so I'll dunk it in my tea later.
Perfect for your
The
diet.
rum will take off the edge. And the cake I can actually eat. So that is amazing. Thank you. I appreciate that. It's really kind of you.
Pleasure.
We need to set a precedent for every guest now to try and bring us something nice to eat, okay?
Don't get carried away. It's only a rum cake.
Mate, look, thank you ever so much. First of all, just before we start, where were you 24 hours ago?
24 hours ago, I was in the Cayman Islands, hopped on an overnight flight, 11 hours, British Airways. It stops in Nassau, the Bahamas.
Yeah.
It flies 5 times a week, so we have a direct link to London.
Yeah.
Got into my hotel at 2 p.m., met some of your colleagues,
Nice.
DDRE, at 3 p.m.
Yeah.
They kindly came up to the hotel. I'm just around the corner.
Yeah.
2 more meetings. Then I had a dinner function engagement.
Yeah.
A private client event down in the city in Drapers Hall. Beautiful building.
Yeah, beautiful building.
That wrapped up around 10:30, 11. Met my wife in the hotel. She was doing some business she's in financial services.
Yeah.
So she was over in Jersey.
Yeah.
Atelier. So we met. Quick kiss, straight to bed, wrecked.
Yeah.
Up early this morning, first meeting at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Local time, and 2 more meetings since, and now I'm here.
Love
Great
that.
pleasure. Fly out tomorrow morning.
Wow. Love that.
Like
So
visit.
we're gonna get into the Cayman Islands in a little bit, because that is, one of the biggest reasons why we want you on the podcast. We've got so much to ask you. How we obviously like to start our podcast is just diving in very quickly into your upbringing, and your accent gives away a slight hint to everybody. But tell us a little bit quickly about where you were born, how you grew up, and the kind of the start of your kind of school, and also then into your career.
Sure. So I'm from the north side of the Cayman Islands originally. That's a joke. I'm from a place called Tipperary. They wrote a song about it. It's a long way to Tipperary. So grew up in Ireland.
Yeah.
A 70s child, so that gives away my age. Grew up initially in a small little store, like a little corner shop. My mom grew up in the shopkeeping or supermarket business. So first 4 years of my life, I was just surrounded by customers. I was the eldest of 4. Then my parents moved maybe about 40 miles, still within the county, and we became farmers. So essentially, I grew up on a farm. Dairy and so cattle and sheep, really, really tough, right? In the 1980s. I mean, not a lot of money.
Yeah.
I remember my dad borrowing money at something like 22%, which sounds crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what it was like back then, you know, to do whatever, home improvements, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So really understood the value of hard work.
Yeah.
Went to local comprehensive schools, did high school, I sound very American, secondary school, all within the county.
Yeah.
And then at some point, so, you know, growing up in the 80s, not a lot of money around, you know, farming, definitely not luxury.
Yeah.
Never wanted to be a farmer. And I was the eldest of four, 2 boys, 2 girls in our family. You know, didn't definitely want to inherit a farm. So the big occasion as a young family was, you know, grew up Catholic, right? So you'd have the sacraments. So if you made your confirmation, you got to go to a hotel for a nice swanky meal. And I remember seeing this guy one time, like suited and booted, like really, it's like Benji today, looking at $1 million. And I went, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
So that was about 10, 12 years of age.
Yeah.
And I just got fixated with hotel management, hospitality.
Love that. Yeah.
By the age of 13, kind of went to secondary school, high school. I had already predetermined where I wanted to go and study hospitality. Don't ask me why, but I was just absolutely fixated on it.
Wicked.
Wow.
And it happened to be a private school, which is kind of unusual for third level education in Ireland. So, you know, my parents were like, oh my God, this guy wants to go to a private third level school. How are we going to afford that? So had to work hard. My dad was sort of a contractor as well as a part-time farmer, working summer jobs. I remember my first paycheck was like for £20 in old pounds money, Irish money, you know, for like 60 hours of hard labor. But again, you know, good work ethic. You know, hospitality is quite tough. Went into this private school. Eventually at the age of 17, I graduated pretty young. And that was really my intro into luxury, right?
Love that.
And this school was pretty small, but it had an international student population. So this is like early 90s. So we're talking like 92 to 96. One of our years in the college was abroad, so Europe. So I was very, very lucky to go to probably the best placement of the school that time. So Zurich, Switzerland.
Nice.
Learned 3 languages pretty much in
Nice.
1 year. Came home speaking fluent Swiss German. There might have been a Swiss girlfriend that was kind of helpful there. Her parents didn't speak English. Swiss German is absolutely useless outside of Switzerland as a language, but it was fun. And then came to London, lived here for 2 years. Sort of late 90s. That was an interesting time. For some of you, if you recall, the London bombings started with, you know, back in 96, 97. Not a nice time to be an Irish guy in London. But anyway, you know, it is what it is. Taught me resilience. So worked for an Irish hotel group that had a couple of hotels in London. Did that, earned no money whatsoever, lived in Blackheath Village, very posh, worked in South Kensington. Nice. So navigating, navigating tube and public transport systems back in the day, I was a man of the world with no money. Moved back to Dublin, then developed my hospitality career for maybe a year or two. I got the opportunity to come back to the UK. And I was pretty aggressive in my young hospitality years. And I suppose the pinnacle back then was I got to open my first hotel as general manager the day I turned 25. So I was pretty young. Wow. Yeah, in Bristol.
Was that what you'd always dreamt of? When you saw the hotelier, when you're that first guy in the shop suit?
Yeah, I grew up watching Fawlty Towers. I wanted to be Basil Fawlty.
Love that.
And, I mean, you know, growing up in the 80s, 90s, you know, with not a lot of money, there was no real guarantee of jobs. One of the things of this hospitality school which was the Shannon College of Hotel Management, at the time, have produced some of the world's best hoteliers today. And the guarantee was that when you graduated, you got a job.
Yeah.
And that was a pretty big deal in the 90s.
Yeah.
And you could travel the globe, right? And you always there was very strong alumni within this school. So, if you were a graduate of Shannon and you had your CV back then, paper CV, you got the job pretty much.
And so I don't want to ruin your train of thought in terms of your journey, and I'll let you carry on. But in terms of being such a young age, being a general manager at 25, did you feel any element of imposter syndrome? And did perhaps people not maybe take you as seriously because you were so
100%,
young?
100%, Benji. Firstly, I wasn't ready for it. I talked my way into the job. I was probably really good with people. And I suppose that's why, I ended up in real estate. Most of my team were minimum 10 years older than me, if not more, right? In the senior management team. So, we talked about it off camera. When I would put on the suit, it was like a coat of armor. And, my wife now jokes today that it's like, I've got a split personality. Put on a suit, I'm a complete different guy, and that made me feel mature, I guess, when I was a younger guy, young executive. But I'd like to think that my hospitality career started when I was 16. So I had 9 years of experience at that point, whereas some of the others may not have. But no denying, the team celebrated my 25th birthday the night we opened the hotel.
Brilliant.
And but you could tell there was look at this kind of young upstart, blah blah blah. But if I'll be honest, I wasn't ready for it. But you just learn the old-fashioned way, and hospitality was one of those careers that you could learn the old-fashioned way, and you learned how to deal with situations like redundancies and all the HR stuff that's just horrendous to deal with. Because I had nothing to measure it by, I just kind of did it. You just did it. And I was single at the time. I didn't have a significant other. So it was work, sleep, work, sleep, work, sleep. And that was it. Right.
What skill sets do you need to become a top hotelier?
I think, personality. I think you need to be a really good reader of people really quickly. I think, interpersonal skills are super important. Work ethic, absolutely. So anybody that grows up working hard or in a business, maybe that their parents own or farm, that certainly helps. I think, being the eldest of 4 kids, I kind of always had a sense of responsibility. Right. Yeah. So I suppose I was older than my years for the longest time. The school that we went to was run at the time by an ex-army guy. So, we literally had uniform lineup every Monday morning.
Really?
If your hairline was over your shirt, get a haircut.
Really?
If the inside of your sleeve was anyway marked, go change your shirt. Literally, we were dressed.
That's standards, isn't it?
That's standards.
It's setting standards.
Yeah, shoes had to be polished.
I love that.
Absolutely.
Wicked.
So, it's pretty much like the army. So
Yeah.
that instilled a sense of real confidence and discipline from a real early age.
Do you think, because schooling isn't like that now, is it? You think of universities, people sometimes don't even turn up to their lectures, let alone have to turn up in certain uniform. And I remember, I went to an all-boys school, and they were very hot on how we dressed, and always having your tie done up and everything being, freshly polished on shoes, etc. And that's built into me a regimented, the way you present yourself is key.
Sure.
But nowadays I see kids going to school and
it looks scruffy.
If they even go to school.
If they even go to school, walking untucked, just not caring. And I think they've lost that.
Yeah. And this is why, I'm Gen Z, right? So I think this is where I feel like an alien.
Yeah.
So I've done a lot of mentoring of kids in the Cayman Islands. We'll get onto that, I guess, in a while. And, just trying to instill those, what I would call simple virtues to kids nowadays. They're looking at me going, what's wrong with you, Mr. O'Brien?
Yeah.
100%. Mr. James. They're like, we live in a different world.
Yeah.
But anyway, I would not regret one moment of that, because I think, especially now in real estate, and you guys know this, that when you're on show, right? I mean, it's a stage, and you're dealing in super prime stuff.
Yeah.
If you haven't done your homework, if you're not prepared, if you don't look the part, you don't need to wear a suit, but I mean, I think you need to look confident. To bring those people on this magnificent journey, and irrespective of your background, I think the core principles still stand today.
100%.
And I hope they continue to still stand in our industry, right?
Okay, so 25, you just opened up your first hotel. Tell us how the next steps of your career pan out.
Yeah, I guess the next maybe 7 years were bouncing around then, as hoteliers do, and hospitality people, they move. So eventually the calling back to Ireland. So I moved back to Dublin. Shout out to Tara and your team. I believe is from Dublin.
And I think I don't actually know.
I met her earlier. She's a proud Dublin lady. So Dublin for a couple of years, and that was in the sort of early 2000s as this like economic boom was happening, and no better place to be at the time than Ireland, where pretty much like a plumber suddenly became a property developer. Literally. So, I mean, people were building hotels. So I worked for developers. It was really good for my career because I got to understand how a developer mindset works. So, I guess my skill set back then was opening hotels. So dealing with architects and all of the teams, then delivering, they'd hand over a completed property. We'd obviously get a management team together. So lots of recruitment, aggressive recruitment, training, and then cut the ribbon. And now it's my problem to make the return on the investment, right? So and a lot of these hotels were, the budgets were blown, right? So it was a funny time, funny haha, and otherwise. But met my now wife, I suppose, along the journey. Got married in 2006, so 19 years married. This September 23rd, I do remember. We stayed in Ireland then until 2008. My last role was a regional sort of general manager of boutique hotels. So I felt at that point I had reached the top of the class, for want of a better word. I had a great job. I was paying a lot of income tax, but regionally managing a couple of hotels, a decent team, working for a bunch of property developers. Life was fun, but the undertone was something was happening. I could tell, these guys were under a lot of financial pressure. I didn't rightly know what was going on in the world, but what was about to unfold. Literally. So this is kind of back 2007. What was going to happen a year later?
I know. I was going to say
was just like you guys remember that. It was just Ireland crashed spectacularly. Because it was all subprime market, right? I mean, I remember my first mortgage. I was offered 105%. Wow. So the 5% to buy the furniture, pretty much could buy the car, could buy everything. I mean, it was crazy. And you doubled your money in 12 months. Like our first house, we literally doubled our money in 12 months.
Wow.
But then, of course, the house that we eventually bought and had to hold for a long time in Ireland, I think we sold that for less than half, 13 or 14 years later. Wow. So that was, and I was doing crazy stuff like, I mean, the confidence back then. I mean, at one point I'd invested in a rundown old watermill, like old grain store in the village where my parents are, and they're now in the supermarket business. We were building like a small country house hotel. I was 27, 28, designing that with architects. Like the world, like who cares? Let's do it. We'll get the finance for it. Until I remember sitting down with a banker, and he wanted to put my parents' business as collateral. And something the penny dropped and said, James, you can't do this. What if this doesn't work? You're going to put your parents out on the street with your 3 younger siblings, because there was an age gap of about 4 years. So my younger siblings were like finishing secondary school, going into college. My dad was like fully behind me. Like he thought, listen, I believe my son, no problem whatsoever. And I just knew, like, the banker, he didn't care about me, my family. It's all about the fees.
Of course it is.
Right?
It is. Yeah. That's all they wanted.
He was just getting his margin.
Yeah.
And I just looked at him and I said, absolutely no, I'm not going to do this. And he called me everything under the sun, really like tried to pressurize me into a deal. And I, for whatever reason, thankfully, I backed out of it. Now ended up owing a lot of money as a result.
Yeah.
But, again, just maybe call it luck. I don't know what it is. And I was like, working probably 70, 80 hours a week, then driving home, which was maybe a 2.5 hour, 3 hour journey to like meet with architects first thing in the morning. Then like my team going, where are you? You're supposed to be here. Oh yeah, I'll be back. I'll be in after lunch. Get on the car. Like, I mean, I was burning out. Just had met my now wife, girlfriend at the time. And she must have thought I was like freaking crazy.
Lunatic.
You must have learned. I mean, you were 27. You must have learned so much. To go, not many 27-year-olds now, would look back at their career and think, right, I've opened up hotels, I've run big corporations, I've building hotels, going through finance. You had such a great learning. Yeah, just up to the age of 27, which must have helped you a lot now going forward.
But I didn't think about it like that. I just thought this was normal.
No, but this was like normal at the time. Well, we all do, don't we? We all do. Do it through the day-to-day, just thinking this is normal.
Didn't think about it.
It's only when you look back a year later and you go, okay, I was actually doing something.
There was no podcast, right? You weren't
100%.
listening. You were reading I'd like read an Irish financial magazine and go, okay, but this guy did this. Oh, I can do that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was that crazy.
Yeah.
So it's been on then another couple of years, pre-financial crash. So 2007, just been married, met a college friend of mine who had just come back from the Cayman Islands, had lived there for a couple of years. We were really close, and I never got to go out and visit her, right? Actually, she was at our wedding. And I remember calling her around mid-January. So picture this, a cold, wet January night in Ireland. But like here, right? And I'm like, Emma, talk to me about the Cayman Islands. Like, is there an opportunity? And my friends used to call me Jim Bob in college. He said, well, Jim Bob, you could be a bartender if you wanted to. But your wife, Hazel, like, she'll get a great job because she's an accountant, right? And I was like, I'm really considering doing something like this. And I was doing an executive leadership course in Cornell University, which is the pinnacle of Cornell in upstate New York. So Ivy League school. They have a great hospitality school there. And I was doing this kind of distance learning. So I knew I was planning to be there for 3 weeks of intensive lectures in February 2008, it would have been. So Emma, my friend, who had moved back to Ireland, set up a connection with the Ritz-Carlton company in the Cayman Islands, the head of HR at the time. So went over to New York, said to the missus, you meet me in the city, in New York City, on such and such a date. And let's just try the Cayman Islands for a week and see what it's like. Okay, so it's cold, wet January. Sounds like a dream. They're the opposite climate of us, right? Yeah. The best weather is like November to May. Get through Cornell, really good. Learning all about like American hospitality and companies like Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton. So I ended up doing my thesis on the Ritz-Carlton company, who had just opened their first resort in Ireland, actually outside Dublin, in Pariscourt, and really got to understand, American corporation, ethics and how the work ethic is. Anyway, straight down to Cayman. We couldn't even afford to stay in the hotels. They were so expensive on 7 Mile Beach. So we stayed in this cute little bed and breakfast. And it was run by a sweet old couple. Unfortunately, they passed. And everybody had to meet for breakfast. It was like this buffet breakfast, but one sitting. And like I'm suited and booted, which is like really weird in the Caribbean. And everybody that was there, like the 3-4 couples that were there for a couple of days, they're like, well, James, how did you get on today? All I did was interview with the Ritz-Carlton all week. Nobody else.
Really?
And like they put me through the ringer.
Yeah.
Psychoanalysis tests, all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
Whereas my wife was like meeting all these cool financial services companies.
Yeah.
Anyway, we took a half day off. We hopped on a boat, went out in the ocean, beautiful. Had a cocktail that night in a really nice restaurant. And we looked at each other and said, let's go. For her, she got a job pretty quickly. She's a smart one in the family. Myself joined the Ritz-Carlton company. Didn't really have much more of an option because that's all I interviewed with. And we had planned in our own little lives. Now, we had not told anybody what we were up to. As far as my family knew, I was like doing this executive leadership course in New York, and we were like spending a week there on vacation. So we were kind of thinking, let's do a little mini world tour, because I never got to do the Australia thing back in the day. And I got a call once work permits were approved, because you need a work permit to live there. James, we need you in 2 weeks' time. And we're going, holy crap. We have to tell our families.
Jesus.
I know my in-laws are not going to be impressed, right? Because we just moved back to my wife's hometown to like settle down.
Yeah.
My own family would have probably be a little upset too. And so we just like called our families like immediately. By the way, we're moving to the Cayman Islands. What? Where? Canary Islands? Where's the Cayman Islands? Caribbean? No way. Like they all thought I was pulling the piss, right?
Yeah.
And okay, shit, what do we do? Right? We need cash.
Yeah.
Sell the cars.
Yeah.
The bottom had fallen out of the secondhand car market. So I remember selling, I had a nice car at the time.
Yeah.
And I got half of what I paid for it.
Yeah.
It's like just quick cash, right? Go to the bank, like tell a fib, tell them you want to do a little bit of home improvement.
Yeah.
Already up to the wazoo on the mortgage.
Yeah.
I think I took a loan of like 10,000
euros.
Because we needed money
Yeah.
for rent and get established and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, lo and behold, June 21st, 2008, literally we just celebrated 17 years there. We arrived and, it was not like it was in February. The weather changes. So it's like storm season. Hurricane season kicks in 1st of June, lasts really till November. So, step off the plane, it's like, holy shit, this is like muggy.
Yeah.
What's going on here? And I've got like a load of suits and,
and
my suitcases and stuff. Anyway, we get established, and I joined the Ritz-Carlton, which was and still is one of the top resorts in their portfolio. Beautiful place. And bear in mind, remember, I was like interviewing to be like a bartender, but the senior management team went, seriously, dude?
I was going to say,
you want to be a bartender?
Bit overqualified.
Yeah, a bit overqualified. But I mean, because I was like totally stressed in the Irish job, and I just kind of needed
You
break.
wanted like, yeah.
But anyway, they found a role for me in like middle management. And literally within 3 months, I had like bum, climbed up the ranks. And, I guess I had a bit of experience that they liked. And back then it was like 1,000 staff. So it was a pretty big employer, right? And with over 100 nationalities. So September 2008, after 2 hurricanes, the first major hurricanes they had, and they never, ladies and gentlemen, the Cayman Islands never gets hurricanes, but 2 hurricanes that summer. It's crazy. And I had no idea how to handle this.
Yeah.
September 2008 kicks in. Lehman Brothers crashes in New York. What's the biggest market in the Cayman Islands? US, especially out of the tri-state area in New York. Luxury travel, last thing people want to be spending money at.
Yeah.
Conventions, done.
Yeah.
The world is in disarray. Everybody's lost most of their personal wealth. And I'm like, holy shit, we just moved here. Are we going to have to pack up and go back home? So one of the first things that we had to do as a management team was pretty much make half of the employees redundant.
Wow.
And that had to be done rather aggressively. And one of my jobs as the new kid on the block
was to do it.
And I just did it.
Yeah.
Because either that or I'm gone.
Yeah.
So fittest survive.
Yeah.
As sad as that seems.
Yeah.
And I had experience before of doing this.
Of course, yeah.
So the next 2 years were pretty rough. Even though it was the Caribbean, it was still pretty rough. Like you're looking over your shoulder. Do I have a job next month? Thankfully, my wife she was made permanent after maybe 9 months. And she was like the breadwinner by far for the first couple of years. She still reminds me of that every day. So kind of worked my way up to a director level in the resort. And then after a couple of years in hotel operations, I had the opportunity to take over the residential division. So branded real estate was a relatively new thing.
I was going to say,
So the pioneers of branded hospitality real estate were Four Seasons and Ritz-Carlton.
Yeah.
So the value of the portfolio back then was worth about $500 million. So we had 100 condos on the ocean side of the resort and villas out in the middle of the golf course. So it was quite a big acreage. It was like 150 acres, which is a lot of land in the Cayman Islands in this particular resort on some of the best stretch of beach, 7 Mile Beach, which is one of the most famous beaches in the world. So I suddenly was in the real estate business, but managing relationships between developer, the brand, and the ultra high net worth clients that I had. So predominantly North American, US, tri-state area, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, and some Canadians, a couple of Brits, and I had one Irish owner. I guess he was my buddy. Hong Kong, a couple of Asian owners, and it was just, it was like a kind of a breath of fresh air because it was different. It was how you managed the business was different. It was all about relationships. But you were responsible for $500 million worth of real estate. Like you were the guy.
Yeah, of course.
And you're running vacation rental programs. So I did that for quite a few years. And for some reason, did well. And if you do well, the company wants to promote you and move you off island. So like I turned down Singapore, New York twice, Miami twice, and LA.
Wow.
And they call it the golden handcuffs of the Cayman Islands. And I got to visit, obviously, it was great for travel. So you're treated like a king when you go there. Probably one regret was New York, because I'd lived in London on 2 occasions, and New York was kind of one of those. If there's 2 cities that really give me goosebumps, it's actually New York and London. And they're so different, but they're iconic, right? So last year I actually moved up to New York for a couple of months. It was kind of a midlife crisis, my version of a midlife crisis. So that's another story. But after 10 years then with the Ritz-Carlton, your immigration status changes. So after 9 years of work permits, you get the opportunity to be a permanent resident. So basically what that means is you can now become self-employed. You don't have to rely on your employer to sponsor your visa.
Okay,
right?
Fine. Yeah.
So our work permit, as they call it there. So light bulb went off, and a lot of my clients that I was looking after, these like multi-million-dollar homes, were, James, you should be selling real estate. I want to be your client. Not like, and obviously in every country, real estate agents unfortunately have not the best reputation, and they're in the Cayman Islands as well. So I really got encouraged by clients that I'd forged really deep and meaningful relationships with to represent them. So suddenly overnight, I'm like, okay, let's segue and let's do this. So I'm like in my mid 40s. So it's a big career change. I've been, for the most part, 30 years in hospitality. So I decided not one, but I decided with 2 local partners to set up a business advisory firm. Because now it could be self-employed. Now, business advisory firm, that was a separate business, and get my real estate license.
Nice. Can I ask a question? Sorry. Quickly.
Sure.
You said a quote a second ago. You built meaningful relationships with your clients over a long period of time. How did you do that?
I guess being Irish kind of helped You know, I mean, the Irish are loved all over the world.
So for the watchers, the viewers watching, you just have to become Irish somehow.
Exactly. Just get that Irish brogue, you know, and turn it on in front of...
turn it on when you can.
Yeah, but no, joking aside, I think, you know, being in hospitality, you have to create deep and meaningful relationships in a very short space of time with guests, and you have to make them feel special. So you like literally have to go, the Ritz-Carlton call it, go above and beyond.
Yeah.
Like whatever it takes, the customer is always right for the most part until they are not right. And then you kick them out the door.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody ever kicked a Ritz-Carlton guest out the door
until
Muggins. I actually did it one time because they really were very derogatory to a bellman, that like a staff member of mine. And I just kind of took the higher ground and said, hold on, Mr. Dickhead, excuse me.
Yeah.
You're gone.
Yeah.
And like, this was a high-powered New York guy, like multi-millionaire, but he was just a DICKHAD.
Yeah.
And he was like shocked. You're kicking me out of the Ritz-Carlton? 100% I am. You're gone. And like, I was like shivering doing it, but I did it because I really, and you know, I suppose the kudos, and I didn't do it for that, but the team were like, well, Mr. O'Brien, it was all very formal in the Ritz-Carlton. Mr. O'Brien, thank you very much, blah, blah, blah. But these are the guys that make me successful.
Yeah.
Not this guy. Well, obviously he pays the bills.
Yeah.
But you can be a nice guest.
Of course.
And so therefore that's kind of, so that the deep and meaningful relationships. So you if you expand on you know, a guest that stays more than 5 or 7 nights, you get to chat. And I suppose, you know, I was always had the gift of the gab. But I loved hearing people's stories.
Yeah.
And I always made myself available for the cup of coffee, the breakfast meeting at 6 a.m. because you know, Americans eat early, dinner. And I've had some of the most wonderful dinner conversations with clients who are now friends.
Yeah.
I mean, who are like, we're global CEOs. I mean, like super powerful people. But when like, and you look at them and you see them maybe on TV or you read about them, you think, oh my God, what am I going to say to this person? But they're in front of you like me and you today.
Yeah.
They breathe the same air.
Of course, 100%.
They're super nice people.
Yeah.
They're very wealthy and very successful, but you're doing them a favor because you're looking after their property.
Yeah.
And so you're an essential part of how they live their lives.
Yeah.
And so I used that time to really engage, get to know their kids, get to know like the nannies, the helpers, all the names, right? The wife, the second wife, the girlfriends, you know, whatever it took. I mean, you know, and just listened. My granddad used to say, Lord have mercy on them, James, you've got 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 1 mouth for a reason.
Yeah. I think that's, you know, we've been talking about it a lot recently, haven't we? And building relationships is, I think, going to be the critical element to being good in many sectors going forward. Okay, especially with the emergence of AI and technology. Okay, and I think there is a lack of people going above and beyond. And I know it's quite easy for people to say, you know, I'll stay an extra 10 minutes for someone, or I'll go and get a set of keys for someone. But really going above and beyond and creating meaningful relationships, there's too many people out there, I think, looking for the quick wins.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely.
Because how long does it take to build that relationship, do you think? Would you say, with a client?
I mean, it can take a lifetime.
Yeah.
It can take a week. It can take a couple of months.
Yeah.
It depends how much FaceTime you have with them. Depends on their personalities. If they're very private people, it takes a lot longer.
Yeah.
If they're kind of warm and fuzzy, it's kind of a little bit easier. You know, language barriers as well. Sometimes, like I've built really good relationships with people that don't speak English.
Yeah.
You know, maybe through a translator or just body language.
Yeah.
Google Translate, you know, call it what it is. I mean, it's the reason, probably one of the reasons, obviously I was encouraged to go into real estate. And it's one of the reasons why I love what I do today. I remember, I think about it, like when I was a kid, I was probably destined to always go into real estate. Like as a kid at the Friday newspaper, like the back pages would have the property section. And I remember like combing those and like looking at these wonderful old estates that were for sale, and like I was always into architecture and drawing homes, and my parents like we'd be driving to visit grandparents and I'd scream to my dad, stop the car, and be like, what's wrong with you? Like there was a big house. I always loved big stuff, mansion, and I'd be like, visualizing it. Then I go home and I draw it out. Nice. And but I wasn't smart enough to be an architect.
Yeah.
In school.
Okay. So you do your license. Okay. So you wake up, you think, do you know what? I'm going to do it. And how easy is it to get your license out in the Cayman Islands?
Yeah, it's pretty easy. I should probably plug what the Cayman Islands is first, because maybe we'll forget about it. So what is the Cayman Islands? It's 3 islands. Mm-hmm. It's in the Caribbean. It's tucked right under Cuba. So if you can visualize that, and just right under Miami, Florida, South Florida. So it is the British West Indies. It's a British overseas territory. So it's one of only 4 left in the Caribbean.
Yeah.
So the Crown basically presides, but we have our own democratically, locally elected government. Okay. So we have a premier. We've just had our elections in April. And so English common law, so same legal system as you have here. So 3 islands. Grand Cayman is pretty much where everything happens. It's 95% of the population. Mm-hmm. Then you've got Cayman Brac, which is about 90 nautical miles away, has a population of around 5,000 people. Mm-hmm. And Little Cayman is tiny, and it's like a little dive resort. I think it has a full-time population of like 750 people. Wow. When I moved to the Cayman Islands back in 2008, there was a population of about 40 to 45,000 people. It has doubled since I've been there. And it'll, the vision is to grow it to
100,000.
Yeah, it's about the size of the population. Probably there's more people living in Marylebone.
I was going to say Marylebone, there is, maybe hype like
exactly.
So
it's a village.
It's a village.
Yeah, and like when you work in the Ritz-Carlton, like if you're I was known for years as James from the Ritz.
Yeah,
like that's how people knew me.
The title,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Love it or hate it.
Yeah,
and so it's a village environment, and everybody knows you. So you got to be, you got to be careful.
And then, so what's the real estate market like? Because I know you said you had 9 years working for the visa, but then you got your residency.
Correct.
If I'm not mistaken, you can buy a property for a certain amount to then get residency.
Correct.
So
there's 2 routes. Yeah.
What are those routes, and then how is the market?
Yeah. So total market. So everything is in US dollars, right? So when I talk currency, total market sales per year is about 1.3 billion US dollars. Mm-hmm. So for an island of less than 100 square miles, that's a big number.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Average, I consider luxury, and I'm in like head of luxury. Plug for IRG, by the way, my company, International Realty Group Limited. So I head up the luxury division there. And I consider luxury $3 million US dollars and north of that.
Yeah.
So that's kind of my sweet spot.
Yeah.
So you can attain residency by investing $2.4 million US dollars or 2 million local Cayman dollars. Okay. So the Cayman dollar is pegged to the US dollar.
Yeah.
Always, fine. Right? Never fluctuates.
Yeah.
So for 2.4 million US dollars in developed real estate, so you can't buy land and you can't buy pre-construction. It has to be developed real estate. Okay. So it could be one property or multiple properties equaling that number.
Yeah.
You can attain residency by investment. So basically that is a special certificate granted by the Cayman Islands government, which gives you residency for 5 years. At the end of year 5, you are entitled to be a Cayman citizen. I'm now a Caymanian citizen, so I've got Cayman status.
Yeah.
So I have a Cayman passport. I'm entitled to a British passport. I haven't got it yet. I will do. So this is really ideal for somebody looking for a second passport, right?
Yeah.
But we are one of the more expensive jurisdictions in which to get a second passport, and the timeline is pushed out because the Cayman Islands government doesn't want anyone willy-nilly just coming in, so it's scrutinized. I mean, $2.4 million is a pretty punchy entry point. So obviously it's high net worths, but you're only obliged to stay 1 night a year. So about a lot of my business is actually residency by investment, where we actually locate families to the Cayman Islands.
Okay, interesting.
Which is really good for families with young kids because the education system is like world class.
Brilliant.
And like kids running around. I mean, we're when I come here, I always, my tagline is I'm selling safety. People are like, what are you talking about?
Yeah.
Like literally, the Cayman Islands is the safest jurisdiction in the Caribbean. Like I have to remind myself when I'm in London not to leave my keys and my wallet on the dining table when I go to the toilet.
Yeah.
In Cayman, if you could drop $100 on the street, somebody's going to tap you and say, "Hey, sir, you dropped this."
Yeah.
Like where else does that happen in the world?
And so from a tax perspective, my understanding is
that's a terrible word, Benji.
the cost of living there is very low in terms of acquiring real estate and then income tax.
So
what does that look like?
On the tax, I suppose we would consider the Cayman Islands, what I always say is we're a tax neutral environment. So there are no income taxes, no capital gains taxes, no property taxes. So a lot of Americans are used to paying property tax.
Yeah.
And what did I say? No income, no capital gains, no inheritance taxes as well. So, it's a pretty good place to invest, and no barrier to entry. So anybody can buy real estate in the Cayman Islands, whereas some other islands, certain nationalities can't get in there. What was the second part of the question, Benji?
I can't remember. But what I was going to say was, and it might be a silly question.
Oh, you're talking about cost of living. Cost of living, it's expensive because there's no natural resources there.
Yeah.
So like a carton of milk. What's a carton of milk here in London? Roughly.
Pound?
No, it's more than that now, I think. I think it's like a couple of
It's
quid.
going to be 3x that in Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
Right. So supermarkets, we have Waitrose products in one of our supermarkets.
Yeah.
And the old stamp of like cheese, I'm a big fan of cheddar.
Yeah.
You like the cheese, let's call it
crossed out.
It's like £4.
Yeah.
It's crossed out and it's like $15.
Wow. Yeah.
And you're like, oh my God. But that's the cost of living in Paris.
Because everything's imported.
Everything, no natural resources really.
Yeah,
There's some local products.
So if the government aren't having any, and this might be a silly question, but if the government aren't getting any income from income tax,
how do they make it?
How do they make
Great
their
question.
money?
Great
or is
question.
everything private?
Yeah, no, great question. So remember those visas, work visas? There's a cost to that.
Okay.
Like my visa as a director level was about $20,000 a year.
Right.
So they make money on work permits.
Yeah.
They make money. So 70% or roughly of the GDP is generated by financial services. So Cayman Islands is one of the largest financial services centers in the world, like 5th, 6th largest from the hedge fund industry.
Yeah.
So every time a hedge fund is registered, it generates fees.
Yeah.
Those the registration fees go to the government.
Yeah.
Right. And every piece of property that you buy in the Cayman Islands is subject to stamp duty.
Yeah.
So 7.5% on the agreed sales price.
Okay.
That goes straight to the
And
government.
that's capped. It's just 7.5.
Yeah, there's a
million
a
or
stamp
10
duty
million or
waiver
100 million.
for local Caymanian kids that are trying to get on the property ladder. So,
Bit of a
but outside of
yeah,
that,
yeah.
it's like 7.5%.
Which is still good.
There's
Yeah.
still
I mean, that's
fraction of
like,
what you have to pay in
you know,
London.
it's
Yeah,
double.
yeah. If you get a mortgage, there's a 1.5% stamp duty on the mortgage that goes to government. Bank fees, they so they generate their income on fees.
Interesting.
So mainly work permit fees, hedge fund fees, financial services, licensing, all that, like insurance companies, reinsurance companies, all have to pay licensing fees.
And would you say the majority of your clients use it as, pied-à-terres, or they're for only a couple of weeks of the year, or do they spend, like you said, the schooling is great, so do you not have a lot more people now using it as their full-time base?
I would say 70% of my clients are using the homes as second home market, pied-à-terres or vacation homes.
Yeah.
And about 30% have relocated fully. Expats moved, may have done the Middle East, may have done Asia, looking for something different. A lot of people that have made a lot of money when they were young, kind of early retirement. Cayman Islands props up. It's on the list and people come and they see it. But once you come, and by the way, open invitations.
I'd love that. I was going to say, I was waiting for that bit.
But a very important question.
Once you go there, once you arrive, you'll get it. You'll understand.
Yeah.
Can you get us a discount at the Ritz-Carlton though?
Of course I can. Of course I can.
And
all my friends are still in hospitality. I know you're going to hold me to that, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's all on camera now. I suppose...
Hazel, we're going to have subsidized Benji and Oliver's trip to the Cayman Islands.
We want the suites as well. I presume there's also a number of clients that come and invest there just purely from an investment perspective though as well.
Yeah.
Not just even to have a second home. That's the luxury element to it, but actually to use it as a vehicle for their wealth.
For sure. I mean, commercial real estate. So I suppose plug to IRG, International Realty Group, the firm that I'm in. We have 4 quadrants to our business. So the business was established about 30 years ago. It used to be an offshoot of Knight Frank, actually, an outpost of Knight Frank back in the day. So it's one broker, one firm in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah,
so if I was on the American system or your system here, I'd be a broker. Yeah. But it's just one broker, one license.
So if you had DDRE over there, for example, you'd only be able to have one
It'd be just
broker. At DDRE.
That's me. Sorry.
Just one broker.
It's interesting though. Yeah.
Okay. But we're essentially self-employed. So we operate just like you guys do.
Yeah, of course.
Like I'm self-employed.
Yeah.
The company pay your pension because they're legally they have to pay pension.
Yeah.
But you're basically self-employed, and then there's a commission split, and you work that out, sliding scale, and you kind of start off every January, boom, at this, and then it's based on turnover.
So how many brokerages are there in the Cayman Islands, roughly?
Yeah, roughly, I would say there's probably 20, 25 brokerages.
Yeah.
So our firm is sort of mid-tier. Like the biggest brokerage is a Remax. So Remax, you're familiar with Remax. And they have 40 agents, I believe. So that's the biggest. We sit at 11 or 12 agents, I think. But given sort of the 4 quadrants to our business. So we've got commercial division. That's essentially how International Realty Group was set up, as commercial. New pre-construction, regular residential, and then luxury. So we kind of cover all spectrums.
And so I thought you said if Remax have 40 agents, I thought each brokerage could have one broker, or do they have different titles?
Yeah, no. So it's one broker, 39 agents. So they're all agents.
I see. Okay.
One brokerage, 39 agents.
Yeah. So basically the head, whoever owns the business, gets the broker license. There's only one granted per firm.
Yeah. And then you have a team. Effectively, you're allowed as many as you want in your team.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, fine. I get that. Yeah, fine. And
so the one broker per firm.
Yeah, basically. I get that. Yeah.
Whereas if I worked in here with you guys, I guess I'd be a broker. Or if I'm in the US working for Sir Hans, Douglas Elliman, I'm a broker.
You're going to be a broker. Right?
But now I'm head of luxury, so that's the title.
Okay, so you start your real estate career. Now, obviously, you've got a brilliant client foundation already because ultimately you've, for the last 20 years, or the last 10 years in the Cayman Islands, you've been building up your clientele.
Exactly.
So I presume that was your first point of contact.
For sure.
Then to speak to everybody and say, hey guys, I'm in
I
real
thought
estate.
I could sell the world, right?
Yeah, 100%. I bet you're like, this is the perfect setup. I've got it pocketed.
Yeah.
You know?
I get my license in November 2018.
Yeah.
I say to the missus, I'm gonna this is gonna be great.
Yeah.
And then crickets. Nothing happens. I get my first sale a year and a half later.
A year and a half.
And why was that? Is that because of market conditions or people weren't buying?
I said it earlier. I was known as James from the Ritz.
Yeah.
Now suddenly I'm selling real estate.
Yeah.
So were there points in that year and a half that you were like, yeah, maybe this isn't for me. I'm going to go back to...
For sure. I mean, cash flow wasn't good. I mean, thankfully, my wife works and that kind of kept us afloat because, I started another company at the same time and we were investing in sort of projects. So, I mean, cash flow was like mega tight.
Yeah.
And I'm like mid to late, what am I, 46 at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like going, shit.
Yeah.
I just gave up a phenomenal hospitality career.
Yeah.
What am I doing?
Yeah.
Now I had listings, but it just took a while for the penny to drop. And the first deal, I'll always remember it because I actually asked the brokerage for a physical check so that I could frame it to remind myself.
That was
this is why I did it.
A hard time to get to it.
Exactly. Yeah.
When you say it took a while for the penny to drop, because this could be a good thing for you to answer for people who are watching.
Well, there's then pennies to drop into my pocket.
I thought you meant like penny to drop in terms of how you were perhaps dealing with people, how you were interacting with the market.
I was trying too hard. No, it's a great question because I was trying too hard. I was trying to be the salesman, which it wasn't. I wasn't being natural.
Yeah.
And I was desperate. There was a desperation there to make a dollar.
Sense that.
Yeah, of course.
Right? And they can smell it a mile away, of course. But the ultra high net worths, they hate that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I would say 6 or 8 months into it, I remember sitting with Jeremy, the broker owner of the firm, and because of, I guess, my background and hospitality and things move fast, I'm like, Jeremy, I haven't got a deal yet. He said, James, it's going to happen. You just have to let it happen. And I'm like, that's all very well for you to say. Well, like at the other side, the other business I'd set up, like cash flow needs, like we were investing in stuff. And I'm going, where am I going to find the money to do the next deal?
Yeah.
And my partners, we were all in. I basically started 2 careers at the same time. Bananas.
Yeah.
And all everything I'd saved, gone. Right? And I'm like, what did I do? Why did I get into this business?
Yeah.
And then first deal dropped 18 months into, and it was a nice one.
Yeah.
It was really, really nice. I sold to Ritz-Carlton, so it was kind of the full circle that happened.
Nice.
What value? Can you say what value?
Yeah, for sure. We had it listed for about 9 months, which is not unusual stuff. It takes about 12 months to. We had it listed at $6.5 million and we got 6.3.
Nice.
Wow.
Good.
So that was a nice commission check.
Yeah.
That was like, and then it was like, okay, now I'm a little bit more comfortable.
Yep.
I'd gone through my first deal, gone through the paperwork and all the due diligence and all the stuff that we love to do.
Yeah.
And then boom.
Starts to happen.
You know.
And so you don't need to tell us exactly what your commission structure is. We're quite open in terms of how it is at DDRE.
No, I've no problem.
Fees in the UK.
Not so much with you personally. How does it work in terms of fees in the Cayman because you're self-employed?
Yeah. So we work very much like the American system. So we have a local regulated body called Cereba. So that's our MLS system.
Okay.
And so the commission bands, I guess, that I work with would be 5% between 1 million and 9.99 million US dollars.
Yeah.
5%.
Yeah.
So usually that's split 50-50 for
Yeah.
seller side and buyer side.
Yeah.
Then anything over 9.99 million is 4%.
Mm-hmm.
And then under a million, half to a million is 6%.
Yeah.
And commercial is 10%. Commercial is a really good.
And so this is your brokerage, or this is
This is the whole
This is
industry.
industry for the clients.
Yeah.
And you can't
That's why there's a lot of
people
agents.
People don't negotiate. It's like, hey, that's the standard. It's 10% or it's 4%.
Yeah, I mean that's
some
what
agents would say, "Oh, I'll do it for 9."
That's what you're. That's you have. It's up to you if you want to negotiate
of course,
after that.
Okay.
But you've got to pay out the other broker.
Yeah.
Or the other agent.
Yeah.
Your 2.5%.
Yeah.
Or your 4%. You're split the 50%.
Yeah.
If you want to negotiate yourself or whatever, that's on you. But they're the commission bands, so pretty similar to what the US. So yeah, it's different than.
And then
than
the brokers will be salary commission only, no salary.
commission only. Yeah.
And then
But some agents can start off on commission. So you draw, you know, like somebody, like I probably should have done that, but I didn't. I went straight for the commission and like no income for a long time.
Yeah. Okay. And then, so fast forward.
Yep.
Because obviously after a period of time, you have to start probably thinking, I need new clients. I can't just rely upon my past clientele pool. How did you start to try and create new business and go out there and fish for these new clients?
Yes. Bear in mind, so the first deal was great, and then a couple of more deals, and then COVID kicks in. Reset to zero.
Yeah.
March, right? We had just done a deal with the developer in New York for the Mandarin Oriental residences in the Cayman Islands, and you know, handshake deal, and we were like on top of the world. I can remember the day, something like maybe March 8th or 9th. And I was there was somebody in the back of the plane, like wearing a mask. I was like, that's a bit odd. Right. So we're up in New York a couple of days, come back. Everything had exploded in New York, COVID, and like half the plane are wearing masks.
Yeah.
Then we land, and little did I know, I wouldn't be on a flight again for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And we're living in the Caribbean. Scary times.
Yeah.
If something happened, which thankfully it didn't at home in Ireland.
Can't get out. Can't get anywhere.
Couldn't get there.
Yeah.
So, so reset to zero, had a couple of deals under my belt. I'm like going, oh shit, here we go again.
Yeah. 2008.
Thankfully, Mrs. is carrying me again because she continues to remind me.
you.
Thank you, Hazel. She reminded me, oh yeah, well, listen, it wasn't for me, we wouldn't be here. And she's 100% right, by the way. Yeah, just had to kind of recalibrate. A pivot, I think, was like that magic word.
Yeah.
So I remember, like, literally, we had a staff meeting, and like we had no idea, were we going to be shut down for a month, 3 months?
Yeah.
What was going to happen? It turns out the Cayman Islands did a wonderful job in locking down the whole island. But literally, they locked down the whole island.
Yeah, shut down straight
and
away.
so I came up one night, I just couldn't sleep, right? So I came up with a webinar series, and we kind of did that. We just did stuff, right?
Nice.
I just needed to keep busy. But every morning I dressed like I would for work.
Yeah, love
I
that.
got up, had breakfast, same routine, we were very lucky. We had a home office, so Hazel used that. I was just downstairs on the laptop, and that's when my eyesight started to go. Starting to age, and like eyesight started to go, and I had to get glasses and all this kind of stuff. But the webinars were a real success. I felt, and it just gave me a purpose.
What did you? So explain the webinars.
We did webinars on Cayman Islands. You know, how to invest in the Cayman Islands, what is residency by investment, steps to pre-construction.
Yeah,
just trying to get a new market share.
Yeah, I love that.
Right?
Yeah.
To try and attract people to the Cayman Islands. And as COVID started to become the new norm, suddenly people wanted a safe haven.
Yeah.
So Cayman became really, really popular.
Yeah, nice.
So I think, again, I had no deal for so March to the end of the year. I don't think I did a deal again till like January or February 2021.
Yeah.
So again, cash flows were tight.
Yeah.
And but then Cayman exploded.
Yeah.
And everybody wanted to be here. Right. And so I was really lucky because we had the foresight, I guess, at the time, to all my properties had virtual tours.
Nice.
So the Matterport technology.
Yeah.
We had video if we were able to do video back in the day, but Matterport was that was it.
Even for us, it was
right?
Yeah.
FaceTime, I remember doing deals like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10 million, like FaceTiming.
Really?
Client. Sight unseen. Now, they would have been familiar with the Cayman Islands.
Of course, they'd have maybe holidayed there or know where it was.
Exactly.
But ultimately, seeing the property for the first time was done on FaceTime.
And are these clients that you had prior relationships with, or they were coming inquiring?
50-50, new client. Yeah, so the webinars
trust you
the webinars really generated like a lot of new.
It's a really good idea.
For me.
Where did you target these webinars to? Like, who were you inviting at the time?
So we had a marketing company. We had a marketing team that were really good. We did it through LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So I had a lot of followers in LinkedIn at the time. And this was like, I wasn't really good on social media. Still not, but I outsource it now, and the team do a great job for me. Probably shouldn't have said that. I do all my own social media. Because everybody was in the same boat.
Yeah.
Right. Financial services firms were in the same boat. Law firms were in the same boat. So we just reached out to our relationships and like had a private client business in the law firm. Hey, do you want to jump on our webinar and talk about your business? Hey, Mr. Developer, do you want to jump on our webinar and talk about, your projects?
Yeah, I love that.
So we just used our own resources, and then we had connections globally. We reached out to brokers in the UK and New York to talk about their market, and like nobody said no. Everybody wanted to be on a webinar because everybody wanted to fill their time.
Of course,
right?
It's a great idea.
And so that kind of series, I suppose, fizzled out after 6 months.
Yeah.
Then the market kind of kicked in again in 2021, and we were literally one of the safest places in the world to come and visit. And you had, if you came to the Cayman Islands back then, you had to quarantine and good, 10 nights, 14 nights. But then clients, now great friends, they came for 2 weeks and never left and ended up buying and moving and living in the Cayman Islands. And they're still here. They're still there today. They just kind of, holy shit, this is utopia.
Yeah, yeah.
Why would I want to be in Toronto or New York or London? This is great. Like, we were COVID free, like literally COVID free for pretty much, like we had zero deaths.
I mean, COVID kicked on your business then.
Yeah.
Hugely. I mean, we, like you said, with London, it was a bit different. Actually, a lot of people moved out to North London, didn't they, Benji? Started to want the value of the houses, the outside space, not being being in an apartment block with loads of neighbours. You can walk in through your own front door, etc. And suddenly you start to see St John's Wood and Hampstead and Highgate go crazy, or people, moving out to Oxford and Surrey and Hertfordshire because you're still within a distance, travel time to London.
Yep.
And these markets just went whoosh.
Yeah.
I sold a house in the country, 30% more than I'll ever get for that house.
Wow.
Because again, people just wanted the space to it. But like you said, then
everyone,
good for the sellers, yeah. But then, like you said, everyone then wanted the Cayman Islands.
Well, it was the club.
It was the club
you couldn't get into.
It was the club. Yeah. And everyone wants to be in the exclusive club.
I was selling membership in the club. And that was essentially what it was. And so, I guess at that time, I started to think, hold on, James. Right, real estate, and it's going well, and I'm like really happy, and dollars are flowing, and lifestyle is nice. But remember, you're a hospitality guy that just so happens to be selling real estate.
Yeah,
and that's kind of, I had to remember that.
Yeah.
So always I kind of decided when I got my real estate license, I was just doing luxury. That was it. I wasn't doing, because in Cayman you can do everything.
Of course,
you can do a bit of everything because it's a small market.
Yeah,
but I wanted to
stick in one sector,
pigeonhole into luxury. I felt that I was pretty well qualified for it, given the years in hospitality. And suddenly then the confidence got a little bit better, and I started to lean on the fact that the core principles that we just talked about, relationships, just listen to what the customer wants. Give them what they want. And all along I'm learning the trade. Literally, I'm only in real estate 6 years. You think of 6-7 years. And, I'd like to say I'm up there now with my peers in the luxury space. And we definitely, as a firm, we punch above our weight. And I'm quite proud to say that I brokered or co-brokered the 2 largest deals of 2023 and 2024.
Amazing.
And I have to pinch myself sometimes. The Irish, we don't like to pat ourselves on the back sometimes, but I guess it's a good story to tell, and you get the confidence, and suddenly, I suppose, then the explosion of social media, right? And I'm a dinosaur, when it comes to social media, but I had to, during COVID, I had to change. I had to put myself in front of the camera. And this face is for radio, not for TV.
I wouldn't say that.
Just social media, the explosion, and
but again, kudos to yourself to do that. It's hard enough for anybody out there. Probably
thank you,
easier for the younger generations.
Sure.
And to see that, okay, this is the next phase of my career. And to have to go out there and put themselves in front of camera is not easy. So, massive congratulations on you and that. And we've a
great marketing team. Shout out to the But you just have to, and you have to think about it. So they kind of prompt me and say, so remind me, we have to get a photograph of everybody. It's not naturally. It doesn't come naturally to me.
Can I ask you another question? What do you think is the biggest difference between your service to an ultra high net worth, between an ultra high net worth and maybe a client who has a £500,000 apartment, for example? What do you think the differentials are that you need skill set wise as a broker to determine those 2 different sectors?
Can I let you into a secret? The work is the same. The job is exactly the same.
Yes.
It's how you deal with the clients. It's different.
100%.
You know, I mean, literally, it's the same work. Now, my colleagues will kill me for saying that.
No, but
there's the secret sauce is the 25 years
before
of hospitality. That was it.
Yeah.
Really. And the 10 years in the Ritz-Carlton, I'm very thankful. The multiple dinners and breakfast meetings and cups of coffee and listening to what people like really successful people and how they thought. Right. So again, before podcasts came out, like I was in a real live podcast with people every time I met with them. And I really enjoyed it. But I loved it. I mean, it was, it meant that I had to work a little bit harder. My workday got a little bit longer, but those times were absolutely treasured. And I think I took a lot from that.
I love that. Let's go through definitely go through the quick fire questions. So
I'll go first. I've got a good one.
Yeah.
You touched on it in terms of the 2 sales. Hopefully you can say the figures. What is your most expensive sale? And the second thing is, what's the most expensive sale on the island?
Great. My most expensive sale was $20 million. So that's considered super, super prime.
Amazing.
And the most expensive sale to date, I was indirectly involved with, was $26 million. So that's the most that anybody's paid on the open market. I mean, about 20% of the market is non-listed. Right. So, but that's kind of the wheelhouse. So we would consider super prime $10 million and over that. So so really delighted to be involved.
Well done. That's great.
Thank you.
We've spoken about the Cayman Islands, obviously just after after COVID, and it had that dramatic increase. Do you think now the world is settling back down after COVID that it will stay like that on that trajectory? Or do you feel that actually at some point it will have its cool down, or what's your predictions?
Yeah, Oliver, it's a great question. So I'll be absolutely honest with you. This is probably the slowest year I've ever had.
Yeah.
Right. So I had a great January, thankfully.
Yeah.
Really, really good January. And we're flat.
Yeah. And is that geopolitically, taxation? I mean, not taxation wise, just geopolitically. Is that the only driver?
I mean, my business is tied to the US stock market.
Right.
Like that's where most of my clients are.
Yeah. Because you're 3 hours from?
Yeah, 3.5 hours door to door from New York. An hour from Miami.
Brilliant.
10 hours door to door to London.
Yeah.
4 hours to Toronto. 7 hours West Coast.
Yeah. Especially America. I mean, it's literally like
it's 75% of my business, Americans. Then Canadians would be a further 10-15% of that. And Canada's emerging business. Actually, we have a lot of Canadians moving to the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
And then the balance remaining 10% are out of London. So Dublin via London, New York, Hong Kong, Singapore, Monaco via London.
Okay, fine.
That's kind
of. And so it's directly linked then to that stock market.
Yeah.
Because of obviously what's going on with America at the moment being super volatile.
Yeah, I would say post Easter, we'd start to get a little busy again.
Yeah.
But our typical buying season is Q1 and Q2.
Yeah.
Right. Then summer is quiet because storm season in the Caribbean. Nobody really travels. Everybody's out in the Hamptons or up in Muskoka or down the south of France or Mykonos, all those cool places. And then we kick back up again. I'm talking luxury in Q4. So like December, American Thanksgiving, Christmas.
How hot is it during the Q4? Start of Q1?
Temperature wise?
Yeah.
So Q1, Q2, I mean, the temperatures don't vary that much. The ideal temperature is about 24 to 27, 28 degrees Celsius.
Nice.
The nice cool breezes.
Yeah.
So that's from November to May.
Yeah.
And then right now might be in the low 30s, but it's the humidity.
Yeah.
Humidity is the killer.
Okay, interesting.
My last question, which actually is a good question, tying in listening to your story, because I think you have this in abundance. For new people coming into the industry and the working world, how important is resilience?
Oh, I mean, it's everything. Resilience is everything. And you don't be afraid of the failures, and I think that's the problem with younger people today, because everything is instantaneous. They see all the success on Instagram.
Yeah.
They want to be a James O'Brien or a Benji Weinberger or an Oliver, right? But they don't know the lows are horrendous.
Yeah.
I don't know about you guys.
The
lows in my business.
Yeah.
I mean, the success rate's about 15-20%, if I'll be honest.
Yeah.
For every $20 million deal, which rarely comes, there's so many other deals lost. And you're working so hard, and because you're self-employed and you're not on a base or a salary, that like you're working hard for your money. I mean, I think that's one of the biggest misconceptions in our industry is that, these guys just like, they make too much money and they're in Instagram and everything is wonderful and blah, blah, blah. Mr. Super Prime and all that, right? Yeah. Shout out to Daniel.
Yeah.
But it's tough, and resilience is key, Benji, and hard work and just goes an awful long way. But don't be afraid to fail, because there's multiple failures on this journey.
Yeah.
And pick yourself up and, go out and go for a walk and whatever it is you want to do. I remember one of your podcasts, you had Serge, your colleague, on, and like he went through a freaking nightmare.
Yeah.
And I met him yesterday, super cool guy.
Yeah.
And I thought it was a really good personal story. And he was at a pinnacle point, right?
Yeah.
He had to make a choice.
100%.
And he made the right choice.
Yeah. Okay, last one for me. What's been more challenging, hospitality or real estate?
Well, that's a loaded question. I probably worked harder in hospitality in terms of hours and building my career. I do work hard today, but it's just more emotionally draining. You've got to think at a different level in real estate, and you never know what's around the corner.
Yeah.
Like I cannot predict, what's going to happen next year.
Yeah.
No idea. A pretty good idea what the rest of this year is going to be like.
Yeah.
But it's a roller coaster.
Love that. James, mate, it's been epic. It's been a brilliant.
Probably go on for.
Honestly, could talk probably for another couple of hours or so. Honestly, it's been brilliant to listen to your story. Really interesting to learn about certainly the Cayman, marketplace and how it's driven, and that's been great. And also the background in hospitality. I think for me, certainly have taken from this is that it takes decades to build trust,
for sure,
and to build that type of clientele, especially in the high end of the marketplace.
Yeah.
And actually having that upbringing and solid foundation of your hospitality career has probably put you into the position it is now. And actually, if you started in real estate in 6 years, then compared to what you would be now, you'd be nowhere near where you are now because of that. It's been brilliant.
Thank you.
It's been brilliant. Thank you for coming on. We appreciate it.
And of course, open invitation anytime, guys.
We will 100%
visit Cayman Islands.
Be taking that up.
I can't wait to try our Caribbean rum cake.
Yeah, definitely later on. Yeah. Thank you, James. It's been a pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure. Thank you, guys. I appreciate you inviting me on this.
Absolute pleasure.
Enjoy the fine weather.